Being vulnerable is such a powerful ability to do. Like, it's such an important skill. It's being courageous and afraid. You can be both. Probably that most days. How does that relate to imposter syndrome and everything else? But how do you actually flip that on your head and use it to your advantage? I'm not going to learn, I'm not going to grow if I don't actually make myself uncomfortable, and be vulnerable to say that to people as well. But I totally relate with you. Like, as soon as you share with somebody, the barriers are broken and people can then suddenly they share, but also they feel like there's an environment to be yourself.
Sarah, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Really looking forward to today.
Yeah. How long's it been since we last saw you? You was in the studio before. You wasn't a guest that time.
I wasn't. No, that was like April last year. So honestly, it's a bit surreal sitting here having watched like Donald and you chat, and I'm like on the couch looking over.
Yeah.
So this feels like a huge privilege. Like, I have followed you for years, so this is like,
don't be
honestly,
silly.
no, but honestly, this is like a huge privilege to be here. So I'm really excited to chat with you today.
It's nice. It's nice to chat to you as well. Like, obviously, we just randomly met each other on that day. Donald didn't update any of us, like typical Donald fashion, as well. So it was nice to meet you in a very organic way.
Me knocking on your door, literally.
Hey, can I come in? Who are you? I'm joking as well. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about yourself personally.
Yeah.
And obviously your role within the organisation as well.
Yeah, cool. So personally, I am from Dublin. So you'll notice you'll notice from my really organic accent. So yeah, I'm born and raised in Dublin. So I've grown up there. I come from a family of two older brothers. I set that in the context because as the only girl and the youngest, you've had to learn how to defend for yourself pretty early on. My early stages actually shaped a lot of who I am today. My initial school that I went to was a multi-denominational school. Now, is like educate together. So you're going to have like different ethnicities. You will have a school that's like from learning all about different religions and all that sort of stuff.
Interesting.
Whereas Ireland is predominantly actually like schools that are Catholic schools, or all girls, all boys. So I started in a multi-denominational school, then moved into an all-girls Catholic school, but I'm actually not Catholic.
Interesting.
So yeah, it was actually, and it's only like now in your latter years, you're like, you always try to fit in. I didn't have sisters, so I always like try to fit in with other kids, make friends. But that definitely was something where you sort of stood out.
It must have been quite a culture shock moving from that school to that. Like, it's like the complete opposite.
Massive culture shock. I didn't wear a uniform, then I went to wear a uniform. It was all girls, as I said. It was a much larger school, so I actually didn't really like school, to be honest. I loved college, but school for me, it was an environment where I think that level of structure and discipline, and purely based on learning and regurgitating information in that structured style just doesn't suit me. Didn't suit me.
Neither.
And as I said, at college, I really, really enjoyed. And so I'll come back to that. But in terms of my introduction, that's sort of my background. Mm-hmm. In terms of my current role, I am the senior director for the people business partner team at Greenhouse Software. So I have a team globally, 5 business partners. I'm based in Dublin, so I also play a role on our EMEA leadership team. So driving the business here locally. And then recently enough, our head of DE&I, we call it IDEA, which is inclusion, diversity, equity and allyship.
Together on that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And people experience. So Jamie is, she just commenced sabbatical and parental leave. So her team are bubbling up to me in that time. So sort of like 3 components to my role, which I actually really love, because the business partnering role, I call it like the bridge between, you have your people team, your centers of expertise, your business, and how do we then become those partners to be really thought-provoking, having strategic conversations, so you are like feeding back to your centers of expertise and then like feeding people initiatives into your business. So it's a really exciting role, because you're actually in the heart of like discussions that are outside of the people remit, but have a people lens to it. So it's like really strategic, really driven commercially as to like how people can make a difference. So it's a cool space.
Well, I think one thing that's cool about that, I randomly just thought about what you're saying, is it also links back to your solution and what the value you're providing to customers. You're kind of reflecting that internally, and that isn't common.
Yeah.
You have a lot of companies that actually sell a product but don't practice what they preach.
Yeah.
And that was something that I've always quite impressed when I met Donald the first time, your chief people officer, that I was like, wow, okay, this is truly a company that is living internally what they're selling externally. And I don't say that lightly.
100%. Yeah. Like my very first interaction with Greenhouse was like, it just demonstrated everything it stands for in terms of its values. And when we talk so passionately about structured hiring to remove bias so that you have a more inclusive lens, it permeates through everything. And like that was one of the most attractive things. And I can say to this day, it has shaped my career in the last 2 years. I'm coming up to 2 years in July, and it has shaped my career in the last 2 years by those values, creating an incredible culture to really like make people feel heard, seen, like demonstrate their talents. Like it really does.
Yeah. But I want to add to that, it's also great for business.
Totally.
Right, because that permeates through to the delivery to your customers.
100%.
Because people talk about a lot of those things, but at the end of the day, it also is a revenue generates a lot of revenue.
Yeah.
And creates a greater customer experience.
Oh, there's so much research out there around how much it does to your bottom line. Like, and you're talking about from having a more diverse team, you're like reflective of your market. You're going to have diverse opinions, thoughts. You're therefore going to have so much more innovation. And then you also create the environment where it's okay to like have a different perspective. Actually, we want a different perspective.
Celebrate it.
Like celebrate it. So then we have far more creativity. So there's tons of research out there about how much it is financially, commercially the right thing to do, but it's also just a good thing to do from a human perspective.
Yeah, but it also starts with creating that environment that people feel that they have the psychological safety to do that, though, right?
100%.
So we talk about a lot of this, and companies try and move towards that way of working, but they still have a set of systems and structure and even technology that doesn't.
Yeah.
or even incentive and how people are rewarded.
Yeah.
Internally, right? To be able to do that. So I see like this conflict of being able to do that. So that tone needs to be set from the top, but we also have to have the right systems and processes that make sure that happens.
Yeah, it does. And the tone needs to be set from the top, and then I do think, and like I very much have this opinion since joining Greenhouse, but it starts with hiring then. Like once you know that the tone is set, it's like who you're attracting into the organization, and ensuring that you do have that diversity of thought so that it continues. So like that's why structured hiring plays such a crucial role.
Talk about that, right? Because you're right. So let's talk about when I first started, example, and I'm sure you're probably similar for you. People hire people that sound and look like them. Yeah. And and they carry their sort of backpack of beliefs, the unconscious bias. I do believe that many people are not intentionally doing that. They're just like, oh, they're the same personality. Yeah. We really get on. No, that's the opposite of diversity. That's you hiring loads of versions of yourself that agree with your opinions, right? Yep. So talk about the importance of why structured hiring, and can you just break down the process a little bit? Yeah, of course.
To your point, and I've said this so many times, right? But when you're talking about like fit and fit in, and I spoke about my early stages was trying to fit in, and that I've seen that in my HR career. Recruiting for people to like fit in our culture. And really, again, I look at my time at Greenhouse, it's about how are they going to add to the culture? How are they going to bring something different? Have a different opinion and a thought so that we are improving, innovating and getting better. So like, it's just a total different mindset, but that shift. Yeah. And I've said this to loads of HR professionals, and it's like this light bulb moment. They're like, yeah, cultural add. I'm like, I know, it's so simple. Like so simple, but that is just such an effective way to say how are they going to add something different here, because it's status quo and the same. We're not going to grow, we're not going to change. So what's going to be different? To the second part of your question there, you're like, what is the process? Like we've basically got our hiring kit. So like from a structure perspective, like we'll start everything with like looking at what are the attributes that you're hiring for, We'll have hiring panels. Everyone will be trained on hiring. We obviously use our own software, and so we're going to be very much compliant, let's say, in that sense. But we will have kick-off sessions. So our talent planning and acquisition team are super clear on who they're going out to target. But we'll also look at it from a diversity as well. So we'll look at what the makeup on the current teams are and ensure that we have like a really strong pipeline. For example, we're doing that actually in EMEA at the moment, ensuring that we do have quite specific tailored searches, that we're opening fields, opening our market so that we attract and have a very healthy, diverse pipeline. And we'll do that. And we'll continue to measure that throughout the process as well, to see where people may be falling out of the process, what's happening. So the TP&I team are really, really great at that. So that's sort of from like a process data. The session itself, like we will have a number of different stages. We'll have like scorecards that are based on purely the attribute. The great thing that we do from a structure perspective is you're going in to assess somebody and you're assessing them on pure attributes. Whereas like, I'm sure you'll know before you go in, and like you might rock up into an interview, where's the CV, and like you're sort of assessing the whole package on somebody, and you're assessing the fit, skills, and all these other things. Where actually we're really clear, like these are the attributes you're going in to only assess for, and then you will complete your scorecards, and then we'll have a roundup where everybody will come in to contribute, but it's ultimately the hiring manager's decision. And along the way, our TP&A team are really focused on ensuring that candidates get an update along the process at each stage
so
as well.
Important. That's one of the things that drive people crazy.
Yeah.
The lack of communication throughout the process. And this is like one of the most, stressful and / obviously important moments of their lives.
Completely.
And they're like, hey, I spoke to a CHRO the other day who the company that she was going through the hiring process with got back to her 3 months later.
Wow.
I was like, we'd love to offer you the role. She's like, no.
Yeah.
That's the kind of company that you are. If this is the kind of, if this is a reflection of the company, right, it's not a good one. And the answer is no. Like, and didn't communicate with her. And because some of those other candidates that they did prioritize over dropped out, they're like, she was like the backup.
Oh, wow.
What a great feeling.
Wow.
And this is a very large company that everyone listening would know, for like, even in this day and age.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not surprised. Like we produced a survey just recently on this around, and it was like the comparisons of the hiring practices meeting the dating world and ghosting, and it happens. And it's like, we're all customers, so it's like, what is your brand, what's your brand image? And we know like 80% of candidates are going to look to assess the company's culture before they even make a decision if they're going to apply.
They'll search for videos online. They'll read, I don't know if people read Glassdoor anymore, but Glassdoor now, a lot of times that like you can find all of that information. So if you're a company, whether you like it or not, the information about your company is out there.
Completely.
Like, good, bad, LinkedIn exists. So they're gonna find it anyway, right? So if you try and portray something that you're not, which you see very companies do all these paid ad campaigns to kind of portray their employee brand a certain way, right? And then people go inside, they're like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. And they leave just as quickly.
Completely.
As well. So
yeah.
I want to go back to the beginning of the journey.
Yes.
Right. I share your I don't want to say frustration for school early on. I went to college, but then I dropped out, and then in school, it was the most unenjoyable time of my entire life. If I'm being like, in secondary school, you're kind of put in a box, and success only looks like one thing.
Completely. Right.
As a creative person, that's not for me. That was not celebrated. Right. I think I got like 4 GCSEs. I'm not ashamed to say that. Yeah. And it was all art based. It was, and PE. Graphic design, art, ceramics, etc. And I excelled massively in those things, but was made to be made to be seen as a failure by everyone else, and told to my face, right, that you are a failure, right, because you don't conform to, you're not really good at maths and science and English, right? And I struggled. I didn't learn how to read until I was, I think, 13.
Okay.
Right. So, and even when I started my first job, Shane, who's my co-founder, would help me write emails. Yeah. And would check my proposals. But this is before Grammarly. Yeah. And even spell check. Yeah. Those days, right, where now you have all the tools to be able to do that, right, as well. And for the longest time, I was quite ashamed of that. It was something that I hid. I didn't really tell anyone about that. And then I kind of realized, probably like quite a while back, but that's not my superpower. You know, and I was trying so hard to fit in this box of what they wanted me to fit in. Yeah. But when I then lent into things I enjoy, like the creativity, whether it's creating the show or creating the design, the feel, the look, the feeling that it portrays, and having podcasts where I get to have these a podcast is a creative exploration for me. So it gives me energy, fills me with joy. Sales, marketing, those are all the things in this company I get joy out of. But for the longest time, I felt like a failure. And that's why I didn't even I was so scarred by that. I didn't go to college or university. I dropped out of college, didn't go to university, because I was like, I don't want to be made to feel like that again. And then I got a job at 17. So I almost wanted to share with you my story first. Yeah. Because, but yeah, I love to hear you. We've spoke personally, but
and listening to you, like, and thank you for sharing all that. And as I listen to you, like, I get physically feeling unwell, and why? Because I can relate to some of it. I didn't love school. I always struggled with reading and writing, not like to yourself. I was great at the creativity, so like I had the ideas, but actually articulating it and the spelling was just and then you get, like, you know, you're getting poor results and all that sort of stuff, so you just feel like you're just not good enough. But it was when I was in secondary school, I had a teacher who was like concerned in a really considerate way. So I got assessed and was told I found out 2 days before I was doing like what's called junior cert at the time. I don't even know if it's called junior cert now. It's like, you know, like you're doing GCSEs, we'd do leaving cert, which is like the leaving cert is a assessment to determine what college you can get into on a points based system.
So it's a very important, stressful time. Really important, really stressful.
But the junior cert is like the first time you're doing like these serious exams that are going to determine what level you get into.
And at that point, at that age, you think your whole life's depending on right? Like, and your parents to say that, like, you're like, if I don't do this, the world's over. Yeah. That's basically how you make it feel.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. You have to make your life decision now. Yeah. So, I found out just like 2 days before my junior cert. And like I wrote in the inside of the exam papers, like, that I just found out. Didn't know if anything was going to come of it or whatever, but I was so ashamed.
What did you find out though? You didn't mention
that I was dyslexic.
Okay.
So I was so ashamed, and actually what ended up happening is I continued. I was really determined I'm going to continue to do higher level English and push myself. Maths really wasn't great at maths. Irish, it's a really difficult language, so I wasn't great at Irish. I dropped French, but continued all other subjects at higher level. So, but I remember a couple of things in school that really like impacted me. And one was I produced a piece of work to my teacher, and I remember in front of the whole class, just like saying like this, criticizing it, saying like, this is careless mistakes. Your story's great, but you've just been sloppy in your work. And like, this is in front of everyone. And I can tell you exactly the classroom I was in, all that.
Crazy, right? When you feel like when you connect an emotion with a memory, correct, stay with you. Stayed
with me. Now my parents are like really great advocates, and my mum's a teacher herself, or was. My dad's like saying if he was assessed now, he'd probably be dyslexic. My dad's retired and he's a writer, right? So like, you know, it's got nothing to do with creative ability. Yeah. So he's like written a book. He has plays.
A writer.
A writer.
I thought you said a rider. I was like, what do you mean he's a rider? Like, in Ireland, it wouldn't be that wouldn't have been a terrible thing. I was like, a rider?
Yeah, it is ages.
You can send this to him now, it'd be hilarious. Even like, Chris thought you was a rider.
I'm just saying, I'm really glad you clarified that.
I was like, what do you mean? I was like, how old is he? You still riding?
That's impressive, yeah. But they were anyway, there were people who were like, right, we're going to write a letter. Yeah. Strongly worded letter. So I went in the next day and handed it to the teacher, who was actually brilliant. Like, she turned around, she's like, I should have behaved better. And she said to me, my husband and my kids are actually dyslexic. So she should have behaved better.
She must have felt awful.
She felt awful, but then she became a massive advocate.
She reflected on it though, and like, what a great sign of leadership that she took the feedback.
Yeah.
And like, she could have been like, oh, who's your dad to send me this message?
No, she was like, and I hand delivered the letter to her. She was the biggest advocate for me then during school. But and I remember another time, like you were talking about, this is the Leaving Cert then, right? My teacher asked me, what does everyone do in college? And I said psychology, because I loved human behaviour. I was always fascinated. And she laughed. And she's like, I don't know if you get the points for that.
Oh.
But Chris, unlike you, I sat there and I said, I'm going to prove her. I'm actually going to show this. And then I became a bit of an academic snob. And I was like, okay, I want to go to a university status. There's like 3 or 4 in Ireland, not a college. Again, none of my friends knew. Nobody knew I was dyslexic. And I was able to get into a university, even though you needed a third language, which I don't know why. Yeah,
that's crazy. Like, think about the education system right now, that you need a third language to go to college.
At the time, I did. And that was the only discretion I got, or accommodation that I got at the time to get in. So I went through college, and then after that I was like, I'm going to do like a certificate in personnel at the time, personnel management,
personal relations,
and like employment law. Then I went on and did my master's, and it was broken up into 2 parts, like your postgrad, and at the time I was like, you know what, I'm going to now write my thesis. And I'm pretty sure, this is so naive of me, I was like, I'm pretty sure if I was assessed now I probably wouldn't be dyslexic. So I'm going to
even saying the words, I'm going to write my thesis, shows how far you've come.
So far. And I did it. And I didn't let anyone know that I was dyslexic, because I wanted to prove to no one but myself.
It was defined. Like, like you put a label. When people put, like, for me, the most scarring moment was sitting next to my mum and my teacher right there whilst they spoke about how dumb I am.
Yeah.
Chris he's struggling. It's like, I'm just sitting there. And I stood like you. I remember sitting on the carpet. Yeah. I remember the room. I remember the conversation. I remember just feeling like absolute failure. Mm-hmm. And then I had to stay after school for reading lessons, and I was bullied for that. And I was always told, you can't. To your point, whenever I said I want to do this, but I could draw a perfect portrait of you, paint a perfect portrait of you, sculpt you out of clay. Yeah. Right? And that's what I did at home all the time. But no one, that wasn't important.
Yeah.
What was important is I have really good joined up writing. And all of those things. And it's interesting because I did have an aha moment where I was like, I'm no longer going to be defined by other people's expectations. And the moment I did that, instantly I learned how to read.
Wow.
And instantly I got good at, I didn't say I got really good, but I mean, it went from 20% to 80.
Stop.
Right? Because it was if you, it's kind of like you are what you think about, right? Like, thoughts become things is one of the things. If you think that you are not good at something, it's almost impossible to become good at it. Yeah. Because you'll sabotage yourselves. We sabotage ourselves, and we don't take the necessary steps or put the reps in. Yeah. To become good at something. So really it was just a shift in mindset.
Absolutely.
To be like, I'm now going to be good at everything that I do. Kind of like I want to get me against the world, like you said, like I'm going to prove to you. And then all of a sudden I started excelling in various different areas. And one of my team members actually a few years ago bought me for Secret Santa a book. It's really random. I don't know how she found this book. It was How to Be Good at Everything. Yeah. And she's like, you're really annoying because you're good at everything. And I was like, no. There's a misconception. It's like, no one sees all the failures. all the times you fall on your face, all that thing. Everyone just sees the success, right? No one sees that. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing 20 years of me and Shane grinding to get to this space where we're sitting right now. No one saw the 20 years of tears, arguments, you know, all of the things, right? The highs and lows of business. They just see the success, because no one, I guarantee you, if we probably asked, if you didn't say this today and we asked people around you, they would be like, what?
Yeah.
They'd have no idea.
Completely. I've had someone say, like, no, you're not.
Oh, yeah. Someone just said, no, you're not.
Like, all right. It's not a compliment, I don't know. But you mentioned about, like, superpowers. And the thing is, nobody says, actually, being dyslexic has so many superpowers. And
what are they? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, well, I've only really spoken about being dyslexic in the last 2 years. And I think it's really since I joined Greenhouse and the environment that's set. But when I told somebody who I worked with really closely in Greenhouse, one of the leaders, we were preparing for an International Women's Day. I was one of the speakers on the day, and I was saying, look, I think this is something I'm going to share, because I'm in a position now that, like, I need to ensure other people don't, like, feel the way that I have felt, and that lack of self-worth that it does to you in turn. But I told this leader, Colin, and his response was incredible. And he said, like, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I could see myself getting a little bit stiff. Like,
where's the negative comment?
Yeah. What's he going to say next? And he's like, because you have such a different perspective that you bring to the table. And you bring a really holistic and strategic view to a conversation that is like left field. So when we're talking about something, you're not just talking about, like, what's exactly in front. Your, like, mind will encompass different things and go in a different direction, and it'll get him thinking differently as well. So his response couldn't have been better. And I've said, when I've shared it with people prior to Greenhouse, and I've been embarrassed, I'm like, please don't tell anyone. They're like, don't worry, I won't. And they were honouring my wish. But actually the response that I got was, like, so liberating for somebody to be like, that's the talent. That makes sense. And I was like, yeah. But nobody talks about how, for me, I'm very visual. I can connect things together, like that thinking ahead. And I'm a massive extrovert. Sometimes I wish I had a little bit of introvert in me. But I use it to my advantage, where, like, from an emotional, intelligent perspective, connecting with people, understanding people. Then when it comes to being empathetic, leading with empathy, I think growth mindset is also another thing, because you have to think differently. You have to challenge yourself. And you're talking about mindsets. I've gone on a huge journey on mindsets for myself, and probably because of that deep embedded, like, lack of self-worth or trying to fit in. And only then recently, like, I've done loads of journaling. I've loads of different people that I follow to get different inspiration from, whether it's Brené Brown or whoever. But I would spend time to invest in getting your mindset and your head in the right place. Like tapping into your energy to see, like, how are you showing up, and being very, very self-aware in that. So I think there's, like, loads of different things that I've actually said, these are some of my superpowers, where I can connect with people. I can lead with empathy and be curious to understand different people's experiences, what their challenges may be, but where are their talents, and lean into that. And, like, I'm more comfortable in the last 2 years about talking about, I'm actually going to surround myself with people who are, like, going to be better at me in different places. And that's brilliant. I want their train of thought. I want to be challenged. I want different perspectives, because I've got something really good to give. Whereas I would never have said that before. Yeah.
Well, the first thing you was doing, you were personally portraying it negatively to people.
Yeah.
So already you're leading with that, right? Oh, don't tell anyone, right? And I get that, because I was the same. So in their head, they're also thinking it's something that's going to hinder you, as opposed to empower you and be a superpower.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a big aha moment for me, was realizing those things that we are worried about sharing or ashamed of, or you feel less than for, are actually your superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's you being dyslexic, I think I probably am. Everything you're saying resonates with me so much. I've never told that. I remember someone saying it, but it was never like clinically.
Yeah.
I remember my teacher saying he may be. But that plus with my sort of challenges with anxiety and mental health. But both of those things were always things I was ashamed of, and obviously I only recently spoke about it. But the moment I did, like you said, I realized actually they're the things that make me special.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the things that I'm adding to the world as well. And I'll explain the mental health part one, and that sounds a bit contradictory, but the moment I shared that I was struggling, it created such better relationships with my team, wife, even customers that reached out to me and said, thank you for sharing as well, and leading with empathy and being vulnerable. So being vulnerable as a leader is definitely not easy as a CEO and founder of the company when everyone's looking for you for direction and you're saying, hey, I need a break from my mental health.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's tough because they're like, well, you're supposed to be the guy that doesn't falter.
Yeah.
That always has the answers, that we look towards for inspiration, direction, and you're struggling. That's just the reality, and it's made every part of my life by sharing both of those things, my strengths, but most importantly, sharing my weaknesses, has made all the difference.
Yeah. Being vulnerable is such a powerful ability to do. Like, it's such an important skill. And when I first joined Greenhouse, it's a US company, and typically in Ireland, in Europe, we're probably less open to be vulnerable. And the people leadership team will like slag me off because we'd get deep, and I would only go surface level. And I remember the first time, and they'd laugh, like, Sarah isn't going to go deep here. But the first time I stood up, it was about change, about mindsets and growth mindset. And I shared a really personal story to, I think, like 70 people. And I was sweating. Like, I was so nervous. And John was like, you got this, but you got to do it. Yeah. And he pushed me, and he was right. And it's actually Brenna who talks about vulnerability. It's like, it's being courageous and afraid. You can be both. And I think, like, probably that most days. And then how does that relate to imposter syndrome and everything else? But how do you actually flip that on your head and use it to your advantage? And use it to, like, I'm not going to learn, I'm not going to grow if I don't actually make myself uncomfortable, and be vulnerable to say that to people as well. But I totally relate with you. Like, as soon as you share with somebody, the barriers are broken, and people can then suddenly they share, but also they feel like there's an environment to be yourself. And once you start behaving in a way that's true and authentic to yourself, you become so much more confident. You're going to be, from a business perspective, you're going to perform better because you're not going to be like hiding these practices or your identity. You're actually just going to be far more relaxed and therefore perform in an environment that is thriving, that like fosters a sense of creativity and people to be included. Like, there's so much power and people being vulnerable, and some of it is about sharing, like, and I joke about when I first started, but some of it is then as like, say, look, I'm going to be really vulnerable, I'm actually quite nervous about this, or I feel this way, but I've never met somebody who I've said that to that hasn't reacted positively. And like I said to you, even talking about this topic, I feel nervous, and like, okay, let's talk about it. Like, no one's going to say anything other than being really supportive. So like, it's such a powerful tool. But as a leader, it's also really important because your team, you're human, and your team see the difference that it makes in having psychological safety, and the difference that means with like creating the ability to have greater balance in their life, or motivation, and just be overall better and more engaged as a result.
I just something as simple as just really understanding that it's okay not to be okay. And like, just, I remember in previous companies, I'd book a holiday off to take a mental health day. So I didn't want to tell my manager. I'll book a holiday, use my holiday to book a day off.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather not have that conversation.
Yeah.
And the one time I did in my previous company, I was told, man up and get on the phone.
Oh.
Literally, like literally was the words. And I was like, well,
Wow.
I'm never going to have that conversation ever again.
Of course you're not.
Right. And I didn't for 10 years.
Wow.
And I was having panic attacks. I was having anxiety attacks. There was days where I wouldn't turn up and I'd lie and say that I'm like physically unwell instead of actually that feel like I'm having a heart attack and I don't know why.
Oh my God.
And obviously I'm like, well, if I tell them, they're not going to promote me because Chris can't hack it, right? You know, so like, unfortunately my mum, I love her to death, but she also grew up in an era where she told me when I spoke to her, don't tell anyone. So I just was like, you don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
And when you did, look what happened. My mum was right. So unfortunately I just had that one person who was a bad
Yeah.
that I chose the wrong person to be. And that's another thing. You don't need to be vulnerable with everyone.
No.
I think that's an important statement to make, because
Completely.
you need to choose, because there are people like my previous manager that I kind of knew that was going to be the answer. Like there's something like, you know, so just be careful, you know, I mean, if who share, like assume positive intent. I do think most people start with that. But you know, it doesn't mean you have to start going around telling everyone your story and your struggles as well. You have to be intentional.
Yeah.
And it has to be genuine.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. I think an element of trust is important there as well.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to be vulnerable, it's sort of leading with trust. So that's knowing the relationship that's involved. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. Like that foundation is really important.
And as a manager, I'd say, like, don't think you have to have the answer. Like if like a lot of managers and leaders, and I did this, I didn't have the close conversations with my team because I was like, I can't even deal with myself, right? So how am I going to support this person? But you're not expected to be,
no,
you know, a professional. Like sometimes it's just they want to understand that they want you share and that you listen, and you can help signpost them to resources and help that you externally to help them. But you don't have to be. They're not expecting you to solve everything and be an expert on mental health.
Exactly. And what do they need? Like, what does support look like to you is going to look totally different to somebody else.
Don't assume. That's a really good point you just said there. Everyone assumes that this is the answer for that person, and no, it's completely different. For me, it was just I've had a panic attack ever since.
Wow.
The day that I spoke about it. I felt anxious.
Yeah.
Even this weekend, Tasha was away with at a festival, living her best life, and I was at home with Robin. And some of the times I get a bit worried about what if I have a panic attack and it's just me and Robin.
Yeah.
It's been like a fear that I've had. It's never happened, but it's just weird, like just stuck with me, like almost like a PTSD thing.
Yeah.
And I was fine, but I felt overwhelmed. In the past, that would have led to a panic attack, but now I can just call her and say I'm just feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Can we just chat for a little bit?
I was going to ask, like, what's your tools to?
So for me, it's this, and the team, and I shared that with my team, so they know the signs. That's another thing. So, for example, for me, it's just 3 things. To be honest, it's really simple. It's like eat well, relatively as good as I can, but exercise, because that really the endorphin release, you know, the cortisol, etc. Eat well, sleep well, exercise. Honestly, those are like, if I'm doing those consistently, I don't feel anxious. I don't feel anxiety. If one of those things goes, the rest go. You don't get good night's sleep, then you don't go to the gym next day, and then you eat some bad food, and then you get to so even my team pulled me up on it recently. Chris, you've been coming in late.
Wow.
You're a bit tired. You're coming in a bit groggy. Like they would say it to me, right? Tasha will say it to me because I've asked them, please say it to me.
Good, yeah.
Because I don't know sometimes how I'm turning up.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that, like, you know, and it's the same thing. Like Shane, like we did we have yearly health checkups, and Shane and I's was yesterday.
Okay.
And it wasn't great. I don't mind saying that. Like, I mean, as in, like, our blood pressure was a bit high because we're just a bit stressed. A lot going on in the business. We've both not been training and going to the gym and taking care of ourselves. And it was like, all right, we had a conversation last night at like 10 p.m. about how we're going to change that.
Yeah.
Because in order for us to turn up and be the best leaders, the best managers, the best husbands, the best dad, it starts to take care of me.
Completely, yeah.
So I can't keep being like, oh, I'm here for everyone. Well, be there for you. be there for you first as well. And that, again, like, and that's one of the reasons why we do that as well. It's just like the nurse came to the studio, checked us out, and we're like, okay, wake up call, get back on, you know. And that's just the reality of it. It's like, it's tough.
But it's great that you did that, and you're saying you do that annually.
Yeah.
Like that's a really good discipline to be in. Like that's taking accountability and responsibility to know what's important for you. That's amazing.
Yeah. I don't know how it even happened, where that came from. I think I just started doing it a few years ago because I just wanted to learn more about myself.
Yeah.
I learned that there was loads of food I was eating that was terrible for me. I learned I had allergies to so many things that I didn't even know that were my favorite food.
Anything that you miss like greatly?
No, not like that. So I was thankfully I've never eaten shellfish, but I'm like insanely allergic.
Wow.
I've never eaten it. So thankfully I never did that. Flour, specifically.
Okay.
So whenever I would eat a sandwich or something with flour in it, I'd feel awful. But I just thought that's how people felt. Because people were like, no, but I felt like my energy would be just like, and then I realized that like it was like on the scale, it was like 80% don't like between 100% being really bad and 0 being good. It was like 80. So I was like, oh my God, I eat like so much, of this stuff all the time. Peanuts, loads of peanuts.
That's a lot of stuff.
What do you mean?
These are things that you're allergic to.
Yeah, no, there's more. What's the other one? There's some other ones that like less so, but I realized it's like a lot of choices that I was making were really bad.
Wow.
Basically, and then I stopped eating those things. I still have a sandwich and stuff now and again, but like those are the things that are important. Like sleep. I'm like, I know we're going really off script on the podcast right now, but like I think this is important for everyone because HR leaders aren't that great at taking care of themselves, and we know that as well. It's like just also having a good routine, you know.
Yeah.
My wife always laughs at me. She's like, "You got your sleep mask."
Yeah.
My bed set to a certain temperature.
Oh wow.
So there's a routine for it. You know, no
white noise.
No white noise. No blue light.
Right. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It sounds like extreme, but like that is the difference between me waking up feeling overwhelmed, anxious, not being able to turn up or being on my game.
Yeah. It is really important.
Yeah. What about you? How do you take care of you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show the 3 different many roles, many hats that you're wearing. How do you prioritize your own mental health and well-being?
Yeah, it's a great question.
You're like, not very well.
I definitely am like peaks and troughs in this, and what I've sort of pick up running every so often and drop it. Whereas I've actually signed up. I did a run like just 10 kilometers a couple of months ago. And I've signed up to do another one now in July.
Not that. Just 10 is 10 days thing.
We won't mention time, okay? Pace does not matter. I did it.
Just walked it.
Yeah. Just took a few hours. But I'm continuing to actually sign up for runs because I need that sort of goal, that discipline. It's a target, exactly. I am quite goal focused in my personal life. So I'll do that. I picked up spinning before and I love spinning actually.
Are you dancing and everything?
I'm like clapping hands, I'm cheering. I did soul cycle in the US actually. Loved it.
That's what I was thinking when you said
Oh yeah, they did DJ and everything there. That was cool.
Yeah.
So I do love that. I do need an accountability. Like I've 2 friends I go to the gym with, and that is brilliant because that sort of keeps that discipline. Because I'll prioritize sleep than exercise, when actually I should be prioritizing both. I am pretty good at knowing when my energy is getting low and like making sure that I do have a holiday booked, and getting some downtime like that. And I really encourage that with my team. Like my team are predominantly based in the US, so coming in with a European lens on taking time off.
Oh, because US are pretty bad.
Yeah.
Some are like, let's not even get into it, but yeah.
Yeah. So I'm pretty good at that. And I also will be quite reflective and journal. So if I feel like
interesting,
I only took that up just during COVID and after COVID. I think we all have a COVID story, and that's something that I really went on a whole journey on. So
you didn't notes, or you physically write it down?
Yeah, I got a great gift from a friend of mine, which I was going through personally a bit of a difficult time, and it was a book actually that it was 12 months, and each month was a new skill that you were learning. And this is my first time picking up anything like this. It was all self-reflections. Now, I'd be interested in this space anyway. I think having studied social science and in this space of HR, you're curious anyway. So I went through that journey, and then I have like yearly head plans. It's an Irish company, but basically it's like weekly reflections, daily. I went through a time when I was doing it daily when I felt like I needed it. A lot of it's self-coaching, like what do you need?
What does get out of your brain?
Totally get out of your brain. But the difference it can make in just setting yourself up, like I will know, and I do some coaching in my role as well. And I said this to somebody recently, I'm like, what's your walk? So as you're going into your next meeting, or you're setting yourself up for the day, like what energy, like what do you want to show up as today? And if you are exhausted, or you haven't slept well, you're talking about food and it having an impact, what are you going to do, or what do you need to reset? Because I don't want to come across tired and exhausted and cranky. So you have a responsibility as a person, as a leader, but just to enjoy things, like to reset. So if I need to reset, I'll do that, or I'll do a beach walk.
Beach walk?
Yeah, I live close enough to the beach.
Is it a beach, or is it like stones?
It's actually a beach. Now,
really?
It's close.
Like in England beach, they go, come to the beach, and it's just like stones.
No, it is a sandy beach.
Really?
It's really close to the city centre, so I wouldn't go swimming in it, although people do. I'll be freezing.
Yeah.
But you can blow the cobwebs there. So there's different things. Yeah. Like I'm very self-aware on like energy and tapping into that. Could I do better? 100%.
Everyone can. Don't beat yourself up about it. Give yourself grace is one of the big feedbacks that I got from my coach. Yeah. Stop beating yourself up. Give yourself grace.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, on the journaling thing, that was one of the things that helped me with my anxiety.
Right. Okay.
Of writing down what is the fear, because then you kind of take all the energy away from it.
Yeah.
So like, just because you're thinking, okay, write down why you're feeling like this, and then the more you write, the more you realize it's not true.
Yeah.
Nothing's gonna happen. All the scary things you're thinking about, it's okay. So it's almost like taking it out, and then by the time you've written it down, you've forgot that you're anxious.
Yeah.
It's like a weird, and when you have an anxiety attack, for people that know, you have this sudden release of adrenaline, and that's why you see people panicking, because the adrenaline is just going. But that only lasts about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you can make it through 5 to 10 minutes, you actually will be fine.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't know that either. So just understanding the research behind it, going, I'm feeling like this, the adrenaline's going, literally 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to be fine. So journaling was one. Also before sleep, I do it on my phone. I make sure my the dark mode's on, so it's not like bright on my phone. So all the things that I'm worried about, I'll write it all, get out of my head. Otherwise I sit there thinking about it all night.
Yeah.
I'm like sitting there and I'll just for like an hour just thinking about tomorrow and all the things. So if I write them all down, it's fine.
Completely.
So that's a big one. And then like breathing exercises, like box breathing, stuff like that helps calm me down, center me. And then fasting is another one.
Okay.
So I haven't eaten today. I won't eat until maybe 2 p.m.
Right.
So it just allows me to be really mentally alert, because you're not full of carbs.
Yeah.
Basically as well. Also, I do extended fasts, because then that kind of takes your body through like autophagy, where it kind of flushes out all of the chemicals and dead cells.
Okay.
It's like a reset for you, and the mental clarity from that is unreal.
Really?
Yeah, because you carry around all of the, the guy I can't remember his name now. He won a Nobel Prize for the research on autophagy. I should remember his name. But we're just constantly consuming carbs, right? So we're never using our fat. So we fill up our liver with glycogen, and then glucose, and then we never burn through it because we're constantly consuming.
Yeah.
So it takes about 2 to 3 days of fasting, or if you do like keto, where you don't consume any calories, it's higher fat than protein. Then you start tapping into ketones, and that's your body's preferred fuel, not fat. So your brain's like super. I learned it from like a lot of entrepreneurs. I was reading like or listening to loads of entrepreneur like bios. What's the word? Like bio, what's the when someone writes a book on themselves? What do they call it again?
Autobiography.
Yeah. My brain just went there. Autobiography, and then it kept coming up as like a theme, and I was like, why all these entrepreneurs and leaders fasting? And also, it's been in religion since the dawn of time, like fasting. So I did a 3-day fast a couple of weeks ago, and I felt amazing. And that's been one of the main things that helps me reset.
Right. Okay.
Everything. I'm like, okay, I'm back. As well, but if you're someone who's been on a high carb diet for a long time, it takes a while,
right,
to switch. If your whole life you've been like fueled on carbs, right?
Yeah.
So then switching to your body fat is a bit tough. So that helps. And fasting, to your question, though, that really helps my mental health. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I just feel amazing.
You know by the results. You know by how. You feel. And
I never do any podcasts. I always do my podcasts fasted.
Okay.
No one knows that. Listening now, they know. I'm always hungry. No, don't worry, I'm not hungry. Yeah, I don't do, even if we do like our summits and events, I do the whole thing fasted.
Okay. And does it matter what time of day it is?
No.
Wow.
Because everyone knows the feeling of when you eat a meal and you feel like sluggish, right? That's like I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah. So, I do that with nerves. Like when I told you about that time that I was presenting for the first time in Chicago and sharing my story, and Donald was like, Sarah, it's like 3:00 in the day and you haven't eaten. I was like, I physically could not.
Oh no, that's a whole other reason.
Yeah.
The thing is with Donald, and if you're listening, Donald, you make it look easy. He's really like, Donald just goes in there, the charisma, the energy. Sometimes I'm like, I hate you, Donald. So because he just oozes that confidence, right?
He sure does.
And I even now, after we're a business where I host events and podcasts, I still have that same feeling at every event.
Yeah.
Our third event at General Mills in Switzerland, I nearly had a full-blown panic attack before I went to present.
And what's going through your mind? Like, because I wouldn't have thought that.
It's the imposter syndrome.
Really?
It's back to our childhood.
Yeah.
That whole thing. Who am I to be in the room with this amazing group of CHROs of some of the world's leading companies? Who am I to have built this company, to host this show? So there's this. It's not that I don't know about the industry, the topic, etc. Because I do, right? It's just this inner person, just constantly. My wife would always say, "Chris, you'll never be content. Like enough is never enough." Because I'm fighting against that, and it's something I need to work on.
But Chris, do you think other people in the room are having the same experience and thought?
Yes,
exactly.
But I didn't know that. It's only when I started sharing my story, like to your point, where I was like, "Oh." Yeah, it's not just me, and I think many people listening, they feel the same way. Okay. But again, that's one of the gift of vulnerability. So one of the biggest gifts. I was like, people like, I get the most value of being vulnerable. Like, people, what do you mean? Because I'm like, I get the value of feedback, I get the value of great communication, better relationships. Yeah. So it's opposite of all of it, of which was everyone's gonna think I'm weak, everyone's gonna think I'm a failure. What is my wife going to think? See what I mean, right? And then at those events, after the first 20 seconds, and I just forget about it. Yeah. It's just like the initial words coming out, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's fine. The world, nothing's fell apart.
Exactly.
And then it was like, great job, Chris. And I'm like, oh.
yeah, you're sweating.
Yeah, and I've done hundreds now, thousands. I've done 800 episodes of the podcast, but people think. And I was really shy and introverted as a kid.
Were you?
Yeah, in school I was the sort of kid that sat in the corner and didn't talk to anyone. Okay. And had my paintbrush and my pens and
oh my god.
And was unfortunately bullied really badly in school, which is also a bad thing. But like I only came out of my shell maybe as a teenager once I kind of went through that process that I mentioned of I'm gonna now forget about all these constraints that the world's putting on me. Yeah. And I'm just going to go and do what I want to do. Wow. And then anyone who meets me now from school, they're like, who are you? Yeah. Like I've met a few people recently and they're like, I don't even recognize you. Do you know what I mean? And this takes energy, by the way. So after one of the events, they're like, we do like the 8-hour live stream for our summits. I'll need 2 days off.
Okay.
To recharge.
Yeah.
As well. So it's not as easy. Well, this was an interesting conversation. I feel like we both done a Dr. Phil show on ourselves.
Thank you for today. How much do I owe you?
No. I think these conversations are important, right? Like we have, HR leaders podcasts about all these different topics that we're facing. But I think we forget sometimes to make sure we focus on the human side.
Yeah.
And now I'm glad that we had this conversation, because I think you sharing your journey, I think it was also a good opportunity to share back as well. It's nothing like having a conversation like this where you're the only one sharing.
Yeah.
You're like, it's not.
Tumbleweed.
Yeah, exactly as well. So I can definitely relate to what you're doing, and I'm genuinely excited to see how much you're thriving and enjoying the journey.
Thank you.
And as well, it's also one of the reasons I think I've always connected with Greenhouse and Donald and the team is, and that really, like we said, all the way from the beginning of this podcast, lives through the whole business and permeates through that.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for sharing your story. And again, to your point, like, it's people like you who do share. Like when we had our first conversation, I instantly relaxed when you were like, well, let me share my story. And you can resonate and relate. And we're in positions where I hope people take that. Yeah, like when I mentioned this before, somebody has reached out to me, say, wow, somebody in your role, if they're dyslexic, what could I do? I'm like, oh, look, we need to change this narrative. So
yeah, exactly.
If it makes a difference to people, I think it's certainly, I certainly feel in my role, I owe that to people, to show that actually there's so many other talents and superpowers. Focus on them.
Yeah, 100%. Before I let you go, parting piece of advice.
Yeah.
Hard to summarize all of that. No, obviously this has been a journey for you to get to where we are now, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of reflecting on the journey to where you are now, what advice would you give to people that are listening?
My advice is to lean into vulnerability, to do it in a way that makes you really self-aware, makes you surround yourself with people who are, you can be vulnerable enough to say that I'm not going to be the best at this, so I'm going to surround myself with people who are like much more talented in the space, and be vulnerable to say like that's actually what I need, and then know that that creates an environment where people feel that they can be themselves, and it creates that sense of belonging to something.
No, I love that. And it's interesting, like we said earlier, like some of the most talented people you'll ever meet are actually the most insecure people that are also suffering with some of the things that we're talking about. And that's been the biggest surprises in my career of having these conversations.
Yeah.
Is that I'm putting so many people on a pedestal, and I'm like, wow, we're all just human.
They've just made themselves human by saying that to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so
much. Wasn't that scary, was it?
No.
I wish you all the best until next week. Thanks.